folks. Happy Friday and welcome to the Freedom from the Press podcast. My name is Jason Robertson and I'm here with my partner in crime,
Todd Peterson. Good to be back in the driver's seat. Jason, we missed last week because as I used to tell my former employer, I was at a charity event doing God's work. Spoiler, I was actually on the golf course, but I did pay $140 for the round.
Yeah, sometimes life happens. That's just how things go. But oh my God, I tell you what, Todd, you take a week off doing a podcast when you do a weekly show. Doesn't it feel like it was like 6 months off with all the news that's happened?
It goes so fast. I mean, it's hard to remember what happened yesterday in politics. And that's why when we say we only have 4 months to go to the election, Jason, that is a lifetime in politics. There is so much that's going to happen. So we've already witnessed an assassination attempt. We've witnessed the Democrats push out their incumbent right now. We've never seen that before. So God only knows what's going to happen in the next 4 months. But we have so much to talk about Kamala Harris today.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And we're going to give some thoughts kind of on the scenario, because when last we talked with the audience, they were still speculating. They were still telling us Joe Biden was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they hadn't really kicked Kamala Harris off the ticket. But we're gonna do a deep dive into Kamala, and this just in, folks. She is a dangerous, radical communist. Everybody wants to talk about how stupid she is. Is she black? Is she Indian? The fact of the matter is she is dangerous. And depending on how the Democrats package her, she could be a dangerous political opponent for President Trump. And we're gonna talk about we're gonna lay out how you go after Kamala. And it just came out in a clip last night, to be honest. Spoiler alert, she's terrible off a teleprompter.
Who knew that she can't speak unscripted? But Jason, to your point about being dangerous, say what you will about Joe Biden. His policies have been ruinous. Make no mistake. He's been in Washington, D.C. for 6 decades now. He's a guy that puts his finger in the wind and he'll say whatever he has to in the moment. I don't think he necessarily believes what's going on. I mean, I don't even think he's in charge, so his beliefs are irrelevant. Kamala Harris is a dyed-in-the-wool. She is a race Marxist, and she believes this stuff. That's what makes her more dangerous, because she's the one that will hire all the people around her, her inner circle. They'll all believe the same stuff that is just absolutely dreadful to think about what would happen to folks like you and me and to this nation at large.
Right. Well, yeah, let's talk about the kick out of Joe Biden. And I got to talk about the thing that just blows me away about this. So 2 weeks ago when we did our last podcast, it was coming off Joe Biden's disastrous debate. There was a lot of back and forth in the Democrat Party. We didn't believe Joe Biden would be the nominee. We speculated. We even did a Who's Going to Replace Joe Biden podcast a year ago. It was one of our first episodes. We wanted them to leave Joe Biden in because we thought it was an easy race. Now, leading up to 2 weeks ago, the media was telling you, oh, it's close. It's within 4 or 5 points. Joe Biden's as sharp as ever. And we made the prediction or the speculation that the polls they were citing were lies. They were full of crap. And the real numbers showed it was going to be a bloodbath. Plus, it was only going to get worse because as Joe Biden continued getting out there and everybody saw how compromised he was, they were going to kick him to the curb. So even though the media, the Democrats, everybody was saying it was close with Joe Biden, Todd, do you think it was ever really that close?
It was never close the moment they nominated him in 2020, when the establishment hand-selected Joe Biden after winning just one primary in 2020. Remember, he had to do some backroom deals in South Carolina to get the black vote out for him. And then Kamala Harris dropped out famously with like 1%. She didn't even go to visit states. Nobody wanted Kamala Harris in 2020 because on the debate stage, she got absolutely wrecked. We've played clips of Tulsi Gabbard on theamericantribune.com and on our Rumble channel, The American Tribune. Kamala Harris was awful. She ran a terrible campaign. And then, Jason, if you recall the last 3.5, almost 4 years, she's been a terrible vice president. Nobody liked her either. Since she's been nominated, she hasn't done many speeches, hasn't put anything out, hasn't really expressed where she stands on anything. But it is crazy to watch just because of the media's manipulation of just weak-minded fools. Her popularity is going up and up and up and getting closer and closer to Donald Trump. So do I believe any of these polls? Hard to say. But do I believe the American public is dumb enough to just regurgitate what CNN and MSNBC tell them? Absolutely.
Yeah, half the country is, at least. And so let's talk about kicking Joey from the bus. You're left with one of two conclusions if you're a critical thinker. Conclusion one, Joe Biden is mentally compromised, like we've been talking about on this podcast, in which case Joe Biden shouldn't be running for president, or shouldn't be the president currently. In addition, Joe Biden hasn't been running the country, and Kamala and everybody in the cabinet is part of the crime of letting somebody mentally incapable as president. The second conclusion you can draw is that Joe Biden is okay. Let's go with that. Let's say Joe Biden is there and he's really running the country. Kamala Harris and the establishment of the Democrat Party ran a coup then to remove Joe Biden from running for office the second time. And they've taken over. They're going to usurp power. They did it after the primary, like we predicted on the Freedom from the Press podcast a year ago. So there could be no other candidates. Now, we suspected they'd pick Newsom or Michelle Obama. They ended up on Kamala because they can control her. So your Democrat friends are left with really one of two thoughts with this getting rid of Joe Biden. Either one, the guy's burned and Kamala and everybody knew it, and they've let this clown continue to run the country. Or two, they saw he couldn't win the next election. He was no longer useful for them. So they overthrew him. And they did it so they couldn't run a primary. RFK Jr. would have probably been the nominee for the Democrats if they ran a primary, but the establishment wanted to pick. Now, there's going to be a chunk of the crazy blue-haired cat ladies that we've talked about on this podcast that are going to be like, that's great, Kamala's going to save America. But there are going to be some people on the left that are going to go, wait a second. Did you lie to me about how bad Joe was, or did you really run a coup and you aren't giving me the opportunity to vote? And I talk about people waking up from the Matrix and they're unplugging the cord from the back of their head. There's a percentage of the Democrat Party that's going through that right now. Your thoughts, Todd?
I can only hope. The only thing I disagree with on that statement, Jason, is you led it by saying the Democrats that can think about the two options at play. Either Joe Biden's with it or he's not. That's giving leftists a lot of benefit of the doubt by saying they're going to think independently and critically about what is happening to them. Because we keep asking, we expose media lie after media lie. The biggest one recently is that Joe Biden, it turns out Joe Biden's not mentally all there. He's a little bit of, he's a senility, he failed at the debate, and then they're going off on all these tangents. Nobody is now questioning the media saying, oh, Kamala Harris is the greatest nominee this party has ever seen. She checks all the right boxes. She says all the right things. Like, guys, this is the same media that covered up Joe Biden's senility for years. And Jason, to add on to this either or thing, either Kamala Harris knew Joe Biden was suffering from mental decline for years and lied about it, or she didn't. And what does that say about her not knowing how Joe Biden, her own president, was doing? Either of these should be disqualifying on its face. I mean, I have to assume she knew about Joe Biden's decline, lied to us about it, as they all did. We've got Tim Walz. We'll have a video clip of Tim Walz in a second, a potential vice president nominee himself now. He was saying just a month ago that Joe Biden was perfectly fine. So are you going to lie to us just like that? And then I guess all the voters are okay with that. They're going to be like, oh, Kamala's great.
Yeah, I've said this election is going to be the most remarkable thing we've ever seen. There's going to be all these events that we never thought we could see before. And welcome to it, folks. It's just another week of that. And Todd, you hit the nail on the head. The media is slathering over Kamala Harris. Like oh my God, like she is the greatest thing ever. And Kamala Harris, I mean, first, she's not very smart. Second, she's kind of a B word, rhymes with itch. All the reports coming out, nobody likes her. Nobody likes working for her. She's ill prepared. We've showed clips on the show. Half the time, it looks like she's hammered when she's in public.
Yeah, we don't have this clip of, I don't know if you saw, I'm drawing a blank who it was, but on Joe Rogan's podcast, he went through the stages of like wine moms. And he says, you've got like first stage Kamala drunk, where she's laughing and giggling all the time. And then you advance to like serious drunk, where you're so drunk and you know it, but you're going to be like serious and hide the fact that you're drunk. And then the final stage is she just goes home and passes out. And kind of like Joe Biden when he ran his campaign in 2020, just hides in the basement the rest of the day. And then she sobers up the next day and does it again.
Right. Where do we start our video tour, Todd?
All right. Well, you talked about Kamala going unscripted. Here's her first one of her first appearances. She gets in front of some journos. She doesn't have the teleprompter, and let's just listen to Kamala speak. And give me a second here while we got to do a little shifting on our overlays as well.
Giddy up. Round of applause for Todd.
Hey, look at that.
He is our online producer.
Who do you blame for?
Oh, we got the wrong one there here.
So this is a clip from last night.
Yeah, let's go with this one here. Let's play this out here. Here are potential Midwest voters in some swing states. What do they think about Kamala?
For President Biden being in office in this condition, who deserves the blame?
His close staff. They work with him every day.
So I think that's what also makes me nervous about the Vice President Harris.
Yeah.
Talk about that a bit.
So yes, she's going to be in it, but she also helped keep him in where he's at right now. And if he really is as bad as what they've been saying, I think if he steps down as president and she steps into the presidency before the end of his term, it almost makes me question a little bit more why it didn't happen sooner. She's worked with him. She's been, to my understanding, with him daily, or at least a couple of days a week. Why hasn't this been brought to attention? If she's willing to hide that type of information, once she's in office, now what she's willing to hide for herself.
Who do you blame?
That's almost like what we said, Jason.
I was going to say, your Democrat friends, and we always use a line on this podcast, share content with people, especially people you might not politically agree with. And you know what? You can think we're crazy, American-loving Trump guys, or we're nuts Trumpers. The media and the Democrat Party has been lying to Democrat voters. And there are a small percentage of people like these people that are starting to wake up and go, wait a second, you were lying about all this. What else are you lying about? Now, for the Trump supporting MAGA people, which is the majority of the people that watch this podcast, like, you guys knew this, but you probably have a friend or neighbor, somebody at your church that's a Democrat that's just learning that the media lied to them. So extend a little grace to them. And I got to say, the chat is just blowing up. Go Trump, go Trump, go Trump. Folks, we've got a lot of wood to chop between here and the election, but we are excited to see this.
Yeah, and just like you said, just like this lady in the interview pointed out, if they're lying about this, if she's willing to lie about Joe Biden's health, what else will they lie to you about? Jason, I'm just going to cut right to the chase. They will lie to you about everything, and they'll continue to lie. They'll never apologize. They'll just have a lie, move on, frame it on Donald Trump. It is incredible. Kudos to this woman and kudos to other Americans out there that are willing to break out of the matrix and say, I've been a Democrat my whole life, but what I'm witnessing right now is surreal. And this should be the response by everybody. I am amazed it is not, but a par for the course for products of the American public school education system.
Right.
All right.
Well,
Jason,
and it's really fascinating too as we look at this unfold. Where do we go on our video tour next, Todd?
All right. So we do have the clip here of Kamala unscripted, getting off Air Force One. And if you thought she was bad at talking in circles, this one's pretty painful.
This is just an extraordinary testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy and strengthening alliances. This is an incredible day.
I heard diplomacy a couple times, incredible. I don't know what's incredible. She says it's incredible. What did she actually say? Folks, this is Kamala Harris. This is her at her best.
Yeah, so this clip, once they announced Kamala Harris, she has only been presented to the public in canned speeches. She is a prosecutor, and she is actually a great deliverer of a speech. If you give her a script and she can read it and she can prep it ahead of time, Kamala Harris, you would think, is like super smart. Like, she hires good speech writers. She actually has good energy and passion in her delivery. But this Kamala Harris you see right here, this is why they don't let her take questions, why they keep her shielded, why she won't sit down and do one-on-one interviews. She's an awful person with no personality and no communication skills. This video was filmed last night. The administration negotiated release of some hostages from Russia. And this was her addressing unscripted the media. I mean, that was like a 20-second clip. Seriously, how can you not be like, oh my God, what a great day for America. We're so thankful. This administration's good. But you look, she's awkward. She's confusing. She's off-putting. And that's because she doesn't believe any of this stuff either.
No, she hates this country. I don't think she cares about the prisoners coming home. She cares about the brief optics. She's going to talk a little bit about herself and try to sound smart. I think she thinks she's doing a good job speaking too. Like, look at all the big words that I'm using in circles, and look at the way I present myself and Joe Biden. Like, she thinks she is just God's gift to this planet here, standing next to Joe Biden, speaking to reporters. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, and I have to say, this is how, I mean, shout out to the Trump campaign or to Republicans or people that want to help. These are the scenarios that they need to get Kamala Harris in. If you let her get up, give a speech, she'll be fine. People won't realize how stupid she is. But if you bring her, if you had her to your barbecue and tried to have a conversation with her, about 30 seconds in, you just want to like shake your head and leave. And that's the scenario that they need to get Kamala in. But if you watch, folks, as you see Kamala say, okay, is this scripted or unscripted? If it's scripted, she's going to do pretty well. If it's unscripted and she actually has to have a real human interaction, she will completely fail miserably.
Yeah, and what's incredible to watch, as we talked about poll numbers, just Kamala's getting closer to Donald Trump. I think I saw 54-45 lately. The media will tell you every day Kamala is super smart. They'll list off her resume as if that means anything. Like, oh, credentials. We love credentials on the left. Look, she went to law school. Look, she was an attorney general. She was a senator. She was a vice president. Look at her impressive resume. So that's what they're focused on, and they'll tell you she's great for those reasons. Never mind the fact that when you get the real, authentic Kamala Harris, she can't even put a sentence together. And at least Joe Biden has senility as an excuse. Jason, I'm hoarse today. Joe Biden can't speak because his brain doesn't work anymore. Kamala Harris can't speak because her brain has never worked. There is no brain to speak of.
Right. And like I say, that's why be on the lookout between now and the DNC is August 19th. They're going to try to get her nomination sealed up before that. I think they're going to try to cancel the DNC because they don't want to bring the Democrat Party into downtown Chicago with all the illegal immigrants and all the residents pissed about it. You know, Kamala would do fine getting up, giving a speech, and all these people giving a speech. The other thing they don't do is they don't really outline any policy positions. Like, they'll say things like, we love abortions and we're going to reinstall Roe versus Wade. But they're not going to actually lay out what they want to do. Like, what does that mean? Abortion up to 9 months? No, we're just going to say we're going to restore Roe versus Wade. We're not going to lay out any.
We're not going to get into the details. Don't think about it. Women's rights, reproductive health, reproductive justice, Roe v. Wade. And
right.
People, all the lemmings on the left are like, we need Roe v. Wade.
Right. And they're super smart the way they do it, too, because they'll say, like, oh, we need to do an assault weapons ban or protect our kids from guns in schools. But they never really spell out what or how they're going to do that. Folks, Kamala supports federally enforced gun buybacks, where if you're a registered gun owner of a certain type, she'll come out and say, we're going to buy that from you. Here's $50 or $100 or whatever price they put on it. And
by the way, you don't have an option. This is not the free market kind of buyback. This is just confiscation, but we're going to pretend that you're willingly giving it up in exchange for some money.
Right. It's just, Todd, it just makes my blood boil. Where do we go next on the Kamala train?
Oh, man, we got some good ones. Well, Jason, do you want to go back in time for a little bit? So a lot of the content right now we're seeing, and the Trump campaign has leaned 100% into this right now, saying Kamala's not really black. She has actually been an Indian her whole life. She was raised by her single Indian mother. Father was never present, so she grew up in that Indian culture. We've got headlines from the AP in 2016 where Kamala Harris was the first Indian senator in Washington, D.C., and so Donald Trump leaned into that. He was at the recent Black Journalist Convention, which, by the way, can you imagine if it was a white journalist convention? Do you think that would fly? So just racism is par for the course these days. It's just baked into the cake. And Donald Trump said, well, she decided to be black recently, I guess, and that caused a whole hullabaloo. But Jason, we don't have to go that far back in time when folks like Don Lemon, the nuts on the View. We're all having the same conversation. Folks, if you think this is just a problem that started today and it wouldn't be a thing if Donald Trump didn't point it out, what can I say? The media lies to you all the time. So let's start with Don Lemon questioning Kamala Harris's African-American roots.
Woman.
Okay, that's why I agree with that.
I
agree with that. But is she African American? No. But is she African American? There's a difference. There's nothing wrong with that. No one is trying to take anything away from her.
Let's go down into her lineage.
I think you're falling into the trap of that. All she had to do was say, "I am black, but I'm not African American." That's it.
Don, I think there's actually a trap. I'm not falling in. Let me finish. Hold on. I'm not falling into a trap by that. When she goes down her lineage, many Africans landed in Jamaica and all these other Caribbean islands. So she could indeed
Jamaica's
be
not America.
African American mixed with other races. But she is
Jamaica's not America.
But she is a black woman. She was
Jamaica
born
did not
here.
Come out of Jim Crow.
Okay, well
I'm
let's go into Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz was born in Canada.
I'm not talking about Ted Cruz.
His father
This is
was
not
Cuban.
about Ted Cruz. You're changing
I know,
the subject.
but you know what? We cannot. It was hypocrisy. I'm not changing the subject.
Yes, you are.
She's a black woman. I don't know what you want.
Cruz.
When Don Lemon comes across as the smartest man in the room, you know you're in for a low IQ treat on CNN.
Right. Well, and it's interesting. So, for those who don't know, Kamala Harris's parents, which by the way, they were not American citizens when they had Kamala.
You don't say, Jason.
You don't say, which is interesting because there should be a real conversation about if she's eligible to be president. Because her citizenship, she was an anchor baby. But her dad was Jamaican, her mom was Indian, dot not feather, from India, and she was raised in Canada. And they're trying to package Kamala Harris as an inner city urban African American.
Are you? You want to ask the rhetoricals? Who's buying this? But we're polls, your neighbors that are talking about it, your in-laws. We love Kamala Harris, and so the conversation about black versus African American being synonymous or not synonymous. What a stupid conversation. That lady on the right, so deranged, so moronic. You can be black and not African American. How else would you describe someone from Ghana that came yesterday? That's not African American in the way that people use that phrase. This shouldn't even be a conversation, but the left will try so hard, and they're going to convince you even harder in 2024 than they were in this clip from 2020, that she is just black / African American / she'll go to Atlanta and have Megan Thee Stallion shake her butt a couple times on stage, and she'll code switch and have a Southern drawl. It is so insincere.
Right. And your Democrat friends are falling for this because they're trying to say, so we talked about the ones that are waking up and going, okay, this isn't right. There's a bunch of them that are still full of retard mode. And they're sitting there and they're going, hey, we really want to elect the first African American female president. And that's one thing Democrats love, is they love being the first, having the first, that kind of thing. And it's a huge thing for them to campaign on.
Yeah, I had to scroll back up for this comment from Betty, but wow, are people as dumb as she thinks they are? Nail on the head. The only reason the Harris campaign can get away with this is because they think so little of their Democrat voting base. They treat them like children. They think they're stupid, and they know they can get away with these shams. They wouldn't do it if it didn't work. So is this a reflection on Harris, or is this a reflection on Democrat voters?
Yeah, and just to touch base on the race thing too, because why this is really getting ramped up. Todd mentioned it. Donald Trump went to a black journalist convention, which I'm going to be honest, if you have a black journalist convention, that's probably the racist thing I've ever heard. And anytime I hear any race in front of a thing, I try to say, can I interchange that with all the races? And if I can't, then it's racist. So would you have an Asian journalist thing and a white journalist thing? If you had a white journalist event, you would be voted out of America by the crazy lefties. By definition,
a white black congressional caucus, a whites only graduation at Harvard. It is right. It's so normalized. Just, blacks need their own space. Why? How is that good for them? How is that good for this country? And you want to say that Donald Trump's the one causing division? Actually, I like that idea. We should have a white congressional caucus.
Oh my God. Yes. How would they lose their mind and call you racist? You'd be like, wait, you can. And actually, like, funny story. When I was in high school, I had to write a paper in my senior year, and I wrote a paper about the white guy college fund. And because I was poor white trash, and I was going to apply for all these scholarships and whatever, and there was the African American, or there was the Negro college fund, there was all these different ethnic things for people that weren't white people, which is funny because actually I could qualify for the Native American stuff. I have enough Native American blood in me, but I'm like, this is the stupidest thing ever. Why don't we have the white guy college fund? And then I remember I had to give a speech about my paper, and everybody's like, that's so racist. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So you can have a United Negro College Fund, and it's completely fine. But
and you can say the word Negro in that context.
Right. But if you have the United White Guy College Fund, suddenly you're a bad person. You're a racist.
Yeah. To be clear, Jason, and for our audience, it should all go away. There should be zero racial preference, zero, just none. It should be nowhere. But if they're going to exist for certain demographics, bring it on.
Right.
Tit for tat. There's no compromise with communists. So it's either it all goes away or I'm coming back in full force. Bring on the white guy fund for college. Bring on the white congressional caucus. If you want to play by those rules, so will we.
Right. So anyway, so Kamala Harris, they're going to lean into this black thing. Now, why did President Trump stamp on this landmine? Todd, why do you think he did it? Because I'll give you my conspiracy theory.
I mean, I'm kind of like I just said, you either run away from it or you lean into it. If this is going to be the landscape for politics, if we're just going to play identity politics, I don't think it does Donald Trump any good to shy away from it. I think you just need to step into it, call it out. And if you want to play by those games, Kamala, if you want to be black now, well, let's talk about your blackness, okay? Let's talk about all the identity politics and everything that is fraught with problems when you bring this into society. I think it's good to have these conversations. So, fine, you want to be black, Kamala? Then here you go. Let's question your blackness.
See, I'm going to give President Trump and his team credit for this because people are worried about how you're going to alienate voters, that kind of thing. So the week after Trump had the assassination attempt, that was the whole storyline. As soon as they threw Joey from the bus, the entire media lined up behind slathering over how wonderful Kamala Harris was. And Donald Trump needed to change the narrative. And his interview on Friday or on Thursday changed the narrative. Now everybody's talking about Kamala's race. Is she being disingenuous? Is she being dishonest? And that's going to control the news cycle. And what's interesting is seeing online the reaction of black people. And when I say black people, I mean like your inner city urban black people who are like, she's coming in our neighborhoods acting like she has our accent, acting like she has any sort of life experience like we do. She lived an elitist life with well-to-do parents, and like she's portraying herself as something she's not.
Yeah, he's exposing how inauthentic she really is. So I call it out and then wake those people up a little bit.
Right. God.
Jason, just to go on that too. So we don't have any of the clips of JD Vance, but he's been very outspoken at the border this week. So you got Trump. He's not afraid to have these conversations. Oh, you're going to invite me to the Black Journalist Convention? I got some woke black journalists trying to race bait me into these questions. He's not afraid of that. And then he's got JD Vance as vice presidential nominee speaking about the issues as well. So the Trump campaign's not quiet. They do need to focus on the Biden-Harris administration's absolute failures across the board. Right now, JD Vance is carrying that work. And then you got Donald Trump out there, like you said, changing the conversation in the media right now.
Right. So masterfully played by President Trump. I think it was a great move. And I think the more we can get Kamala Harris up and show her positions, the harder time she's going to have explaining. And Todd, do you have that clip about all the different things Kamala Harris has supported in her 2020?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Some reporting from Axios this.
That was labeled a different 2020. I'm going to have to take a second here, Jason. I have a few more clips from the Wayback Machine if you want to go back to 2020 a little bit.
Let's go for it.
All right, so just to set this video up, here you've got just some white guy talking about how important race is. There's nothing more pathetic than watching a white guy at his age bending over to support the black community. How about we treat everyone as human beings? I don't need to grovel at your feet. I can treat you like an adult, like Donald Trump did at that black journalist convention. They're calling him a racist because he didn't pander to the black community so hard. He just spoke about issues to them to their face like real adults, and they can't handle it. Here's some pathetic white middle-aged guy, though, saying what Joe Biden has to do. And we're hearing a lot about how Harris is a DEI hire, and they're like, how dare you call her a DEI hire? When, in their own words, they needed a DEI vice presidential candidate.
Morning that suggests Joe Biden is down to 2, Kamala Harris and Susan Rice. But in your piece, you write, don't forget about Elizabeth Warren. Do you think she's still in this conversation?
I don't really, Willie. I think that she really did herself well during the campaign. I think she's been a big ally and an important ally during the recent months on the policy side. I just think at the end of the day that that Joe Biden is going to pick a woman of color. And that he'd get a lot of blowback if he didn't, and he doesn't need a lot of blowback right now. That's what he can't afford. That's what I mean by rock the boat. So I think Susan Rice or Kamala Harris would both be great picks. I've said for a long time that I think Kamala Harris is the strongest in the strongest position just because she checks so many boxes. You know, sort of like I think about being at the horse track and checking the racing form.
But after George Floyd's killing, there was certainly a shift in the Biden camp to needing, to wanting to pick a woman of color for that slot, for the VP pick.
Good to know that the white liberals think of black people like racehorses, Jason.
Right. I was going to say, we're just playing clips from the 2020 election about how everybody is openly discussing, admitting, and it's a good thing that they're going to pick Kamala Harris based on her race, not her qualifications, not anything else. We need to bring in a black woman. One, these Democrat a-holes are the most racist piece of trash I've ever seen. Two, any of these folks that have the gall to say all Republicans are saying she's a DEI hire. First, if you think DEI is great, you should be saying, yeah, she is a DEI hire. And I'm going to say it's kind of like when you see like women who say, oh, all trannies are beautiful and this is great. Go up and call one a tranny. God, you are the hottest tranny I've ever seen. I am not a tranny. I'm a woman. And it's like, wait a second. I thought trannies were beautiful.
I thought that was interchangeable. So if a trans woman is a woman, then a woman is a trans woman. These aren't our rules.
Right, yeah. We're just trying to follow your rules. So they clearly picked Kamala Harris based on her race, but they're asking you to forget that.
Yeah, not even think about it. Why else was a black woman? Well, black, as Donald Trump says, after 2016. In 2016, she was an Indian. And then after that, after George Floyd, then she was a black woman.
Right.
All right, we got one more here, and then I got your clip fired up, Jason. Let's go to The View, and let's hear how they talk about Kamala in 2020 and now.
Haley's gone by Nikki since she was a child. It's documented in high school. I wouldn't be shocked that as an Indian woman growing up in South Carolina at that time, she actually did to avoid prejudice. So I just want to be careful about critiquing her for going by the name she's always
There's some of us that can be chameleons and decide not to embrace our ethnicity so that we can pass.
Honey, I don't think that's fair.
Necessary. You know, I think if she leaned into.
A ton of people don't go by their color.
Wait, serious. I think to question someone's racial identity, especially him, the bar has fallen so low.
Yeah.
Different rules for Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah. So they were talking about how people can be chameleons. They were talking about Nikki Haley, who was Indian, and Kamala Harris. They're like, oh, it's racist. He can't talk about this. That's weird.
Weird. It's almost like they'd have no principles and whatever is convenient in the moment to gain power over a narrative.
Right. Oh, my God. Where do we go next?
All right, let me see if this is the clip you had in mind here, Jason. Folks, we have so many Kamala videos today. It is unreal. So Jason and I are taking the back seat to let all these leftist lunatics do the talking for us to expose how utterly insane every conversation about Kamala is.
Quote, border czar. Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People gonna have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris,
to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her to work on kind of the root causes of immigration.
There has been so much criticism against Kamala Harris. You know, she was the border czar.
Calling her sort of the border czar, which wasn't necessarily the case.
So the border, if they weren't planning to address it in a major way, do not make her your border czar. She met with some of the Northern Triangle countries, but nothing has effectively changed.
What else do you say to that? As Ronald commented, you can't fix stupidity. Saying you're stupid is generous at this point. They are so far beyond stupid.
Yeah, I was going to say, folks, make it make sense. Make it make sense. Everybody, when Kamala Harris was appointed, and let's clarify, in 2021, when Joe Biden was opening the border and migrant caravans were storming our shores, coming across the border, Joe Biden did an official executive announcement where he said, I am putting Kamala Harris in charge of the border with a focus on identifying root causes for why people are leaving their crap hole countries and coming to America. He did not use the language border czar, which, oh, by the way, border czar is an official thing. Border czar is just a term that they coined to say she was in charge of the border. And when she was in charge of the border, it was Joe Biden said how great it was, how it was going to help her to prepare her to be president. He said she has a similar role in this that I had in the Obama administration as a developmental thing. So she was supposed to be leading, directing, figuring out. Ultimately, you know, Joe Biden would have the final say in whatever was going on with the border. But clearly Kamala Harris was a big piece of that. And now
I got some comments on the border czar, quote, border czar, unquote. Number one, we all know why he chose. She checked boxes, but you and I have been saying the entire time, as many other people are, Kamala Harris was the ultimate insurance policy on the ticket because then they couldn't 25th Biden. They ultimately did a couple of weeks ago. They got him off the ticket, but he served out his term. They never got rid of him because Kamala was such a disaster as vice president. And we all knew that until 2 weeks ago. And now suddenly half the country is like, no, she's always been great. I think he put her in charge of the border because, number one, Democrats don't want to solve any border problems. They want illegal immigration. And so to put her in charge of that was ultimately going to make her look bad. Here, Kamala, solve the border problem that we don't want solved. And then that's another way, again, as Joe Biden is president with a little insurance policy. Are you sure you want to get rid of me? Look at all the bad press Kamala's getting because she was going to discover root causes of all this illegal immigration, and she hasn't done anything to seal the border. And so that was insurance policy number two. And of course, the media can't talk about the tens of millions of people that are in this country now illegally. Elizabeth Warren came out and praised Kamala Harris and said she's going to provide citizenship or a pathway to citizenship for all of these illegals. They wanted this to happen. And so the media is just going to play cover up and mop up to the extreme. Oh, no, she was never the border czar. She was never in charge of the border officially or unofficially because they didn't want it solved. How stupid to appoint a border czar when you don't even want a border.
Right. And now let's explain to people, too, the media game that they're going to play on this. Todd, fact check. Was Kamala Harris ever named the border czar?
If I'm listening to just the media, the regime media say then yes. She was, in fact, colloquially a border czar, if not officially put in place as a border czar.
Well, but this is the important thing that I want to say. And we create content on the AmericanTribune.com and the AmericanTribune.news. We can't call her the border czar right now because we will be fact checked. Because the fact is, even though she was called colloquially the border czar, everybody referred to it, CNN, MSNBC, nobody had a problem with it. If we make reference to that term now, they'll fact check us. They'll suppress your reach. They'll delete your Facebook page because there is no job of border czar. And this is how the left tries to win arguments. They're going to make the whole argument, the whole segment about how she wasn't the border czar. Okay, fine. Get rid of the term. Kamala Harris was challenged with helping solve the border crisis. What has she done? The answer, nothing. More people have come in. It's been a disaster for America. But these are how lefties try to win arguments. Well, you say she's a border czar. Why do you? She wasn't a border czar. Show me where they named her the border czar. Okay, fine. And that's how you have to win these arguments is say, let's take the title out of it. Like Joe Biden put her in charge of the border. What'd she do? The answer, she did nothing.
Yeah, they will always frame the argument in a disingenuous way because then they can win that debate. Oh, look, you admitted that she wasn't the border czar, and they think they win the argument. Just reframe their entire premise. Was Kamala Harris put in charge of controlling and figuring out root causes of the border? Yes.
Yes. Right. So now tell us what she's done. And honestly, if you look at her track record on it, it's even worse because they spent billions of dollars down in these countries with no discernible movement.
But again, just going back, they don't want the border situation solved. They want it wide open. Elon Musk has been very outspoken about the fact that the end game is importing millions of voters.
Now, Todd, you bring up an interesting point, too, and this might be kind of a dovetail to explore. Because this is the same game the Democrats are playing. Republicans are trying to make stricter laws that say non-citizens can't vote. And Democrats' response is, well, they already can't vote. Maybe Republicans are stupid and they don't know illegals can't vote. So, Todd, yes or no question. Can illegal immigrants legally vote in American elections?
No.
Functionally, can illegal immigrants vote in American elections?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes. Technically, no, but in practice, yes. Because, Jason, let's use our home state of Minnesota as an example. When you're an illegal, here is a driver's license. Here is registration to vote. Oh, so you can register to vote, but you can't vote.
I was going to say, just to take people through how this scam works. So if you're an illegal, you take we're just using Minnesota. Todd and I are both from Minnesota. You use your electrical bill or whatever to establish your residency in Minnesota. They can't ask if you're an American citizen at the DMV, but you get to go in and say, hey, here's my insurance and my cable bill or my utility bill. I would like to get a driver's license. Okay, great. Take test. You have a Minnesota driver's license. In a separate law, it's a motor voter registration. So when you get your driver's license, they say, do you want to register to vote? Now, the only thing stopping somebody from marking yes is their good nature. And somebody who's in the country illegally already broke the law to get in America. And
they know who's buttering their bread.
They know who's buttering their bread. So if they mark, yes, I would like to register, they are now registered to vote. They're now on the voter rolls. Now in Minnesota, because of racism or something, they want to make it super easy to vote. Anybody on that voter roll gets sent an absentee ballot. Now, when you get that absentee ballot, all you have to do, fill out your name and whatever information and send it in. And then it'll get checked. Now, because the person at the DMV was not able to ask for proof of citizenship, you end up with somebody registered to vote. The only thing that's stopping them is their goodwill. There is no legal barriers. Now, could they be prosecuted if somebody finds out they voted? Yeah. Keep in mind, these are people that traveled thousands of miles across Mexico or from whatever country they were from to get to America. And your choice is, do I risk getting in trouble for voting, or do I roll the dice that they're not going to care, which, oh, by the way, I've seen how they enforce laws in America. So am I going to vote so that for the people that are continuing to give me money, or am I going to not vote because, I'm not supposed to? It's the dumbest argument ever.
And like you said, Jason, I just want to hammer this point home too. When Republicans in Congress and the House recently tried to pass a bill that would, again, codify and provide stricter legislation to prevent this from happening, nearly every single Democrat was just like, oh, we already have those laws. They couldn't be more open about the fact that they simply want it available for all of these illegals, all these tens of millions of illegals to vote in elections. And they also get then congressional representation. So there's the voting piece right there. We'll just have these votes and we'll never be able to figure out if it was a citizen or non-citizen voting. But then when you import all these people to populous areas, or they become populous areas, suddenly that counts now when you apportion out congressional voting, congressional districts. California, Illinois, they are bleeding American citizens because nobody wants to live in these quasi-communist states. So we'll just replace them with illegals and maintain the representation we have in the House.
Right. And that is the point to make here. And Democrats, I don't know how Democrats can function without their brain breaking. So you're saying somebody who's in the country illegally is not going to mark yes on the ballot, not going to send their vote in for the people promising to give them money. That makes absolutely no sense. And your response is, well, it's illegal for them to vote. So why are we talking about gun restrictions? It's illegal to kill people, Todd. So we probably shouldn't have gun restrictions.
I mean, it's illegal to bring a gun into a school. I saw a sign, no firearms allowed.
Right. Yeah, so that's exactly so at one point they want to put in all these laws because even though things are illegal, people still do it. And at the other thing, for something as fundamental as voting, they say, oh no, just let all people in.
But Donald Trump is a threat to democracy.
Donald Trump is a threat to democracy.
Oh my God. Jason, we got to get back on the Kamala train here. I think, do I have one more from the Wayback Machine? Oh, this is unrelated to everything we talked about. But folks, if we haven't painted a frightening enough picture yet of Kamala, and I don't even think we've scratched the surface, they want to go after everything you do. Take a listen to this.
Countries have changed their dietary guidelines to reduce the consumption of red meat in light of the impact of the climate change.
Yeah.
If elected, will you be supporting change in dietary guidelines? And then how will you plan on implementing the changes so that people effectively change their diets?
Yeah, I mean, and thank you, Carol, for your work and the question. I think of the point that you're raising in a broader context, which is that as a nation, we actually have to have a real priority at the highest level of government around what we eat and in terms of healthy eating, because we have a problem in America. And we can talk about all that we are now, the subject of this conversation. We can talk about the amount of sugar in everything. We could talk about soda. We could go on and on. So the answer is yes. But I'll also say.
All right, I didn't hear it here, and if you're listening on the audio, the question is, would you support dietary guideline changes to reduce consumption of red meat? I thought eating bugs was a conspiracy theory, but where else are we going to get our protein from when they ban red meat?
Well, and I got to say, the Kamala answer too.
It was painful.
It's painful. And Todd, you work in the education system, and I attended the education system.
I'm sorry for you.
Yeah. Do you remember that kid in class that would get called on and never read the book?
Oh, they'll talk a long time. They'll never address the issue, but they will use words and fill up time.
Right. Yeah. Every time I listen to Kamala Harris try to give an answer, it reminds me of that kid back in high school where it's like, hey, what did you think about Animal Farm? Well, Animal Farm, it was a book. It was about a farm and the animals, and there was all kinds of animals, and they were on the farm, and it was really kind of commentary about today's society. And it's like, you never read the book. Kamala Harris, you never read the book. The health programs in America are terrible right now. Eating red meat, fresh red meat from the farm is probably one of the best things we could have American citizens do. You're going to, on one hand, say oh, sugar and all this processed stuff's bad. But on the other thing, we got to stop people from eating red meat. What on earth are you going to eat if you're not eating fresh, healthy red meat from the farm? Are you kidding me?
And all these folks that love big government sponsoring the FDA, the CDC. The FDA created the criminal food pyramid that wants you to get fat on carbohydrates and sugars. They will allow food dyes and other synthetic chemicals in your food that Europe and Asia and other entire continents have banned. Our FDA, which is supposed to supervise the food industry, will literally let these giant corporations poison you with processed food. But yeah, let's ban red meat. Let's allow food dyes in our food to fatten up our kids and rework the neurons in their brain. But red meat is bad. People that want big government and then complain about all these dietary issues in society, maybe you need to look at the big government you propped up that has the corrupt FDA just taking money from corporations to just rubber stamp every single thing, every chemical and additive in your food supply. Good job, everybody. Just great job all around.
But back to kind of the point we were talking about, Kamala Harris' policy positions are awful. She wants to ban red meat. And we could go on and on for hours about Kamala Harris. Which, do we have any more Kamala we want to play this week, Todd?
I've got Tom Cotton going off on Kamala when he gets baited into a question.
Let's go to Tom Cotton. And because I think that'll
views on her policy justify having the Republican nominee questioning her race. How does that increase or decrease your party's chances of winning in November?
Well, Caitlin, you haven't had that conversation with Kamala Harris because she's been hiding out.
I want to have this conversation with you,
Senator.
Senator.
Just like Joe Biden hid out before her. And my point is, when are you and the rest of the media going to demand that Kamala Harris come out and answer questions in an unscripted format about where she stands for this country, as opposed to continuing to focus on what Donald Trump said today? 4 years ago, Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. Could you imagine a more insulting comment? Joe Biden is presuming to judge the political views of 1/8 of our fellow citizens based on their skin color. Did you ever ask Kamala Harris to condemn his remarks?
There are
Did you ever ask him or ask her if that was racist?
This is a question. You're a Republican senator, so I want to ask you about the Republican nominee.
Did you ask Kamala Harris? Caitlin, did you ask Kamala Harris why she's willing to serve as vice president for a man she essentially called racist and a segregationist? Have you or anyone else in the media asked Kamala Harris those questions, Caitlin?
Senator, trust me, I covered the Biden-Harris White House. We obviously have asked for her to come on, but
trust me, trust us. Trust me, I'm on CNN.
Right.
This is why I like watching Trump go after the race and identity politics angle, because they just need to expose the hypocrisy and the fraud. They actually don't care about black or skin color. They just want to weaponize it against idiot white liberals. We had that clip of the pathetic white man on the MSNBC program a second ago. You got white dudes for Kamala showing up. They just want to brainwash people and think they are virtuous simply because they bow down to another group of people. But great job by Tom Cotton here exposing even more. He went even further than Donald Trump did.
I was going to say, Tom Cotton, what I love about this clip is he makes my point better than I could about how we need to attack these next 90 some days before the election. Donald Trump says something like, I don't even know if Kamala's black because she identified as Indian. And Tom Cotton, they ask him questions. It's like, when are you guys going to ask Kamala Harris questions? When are you going to ask her a real question, not some snowball, not some puff piece? As soon as we see that, she has taken terrible policy positions.
All right. It appears we lost Jason for a second. Folks, we have even more clips to get through, though. We are not done by any means. If you want to see how dumb they are when it comes to issues on race, here is a clip of just a white woman on the state media outlets condemning J.D. Vance for simply wanting white children in America. And we'll talk about that on the back end.
Are there more and more Americans choosing not to have kids, which again emphasizes why J.D. Vance's comments about childless Americans, childless cat ladies, could be so politically damaging.
Well, so what's interesting is this natalism that comes from an authoritarian playbook, right? That there need to be more white children, right? That's the idea that there's, this is about great replacement theory, racism, right? This is what this is. So don't misunderstand it for him wanting more children. He wants a certain kind of, racist thing.
All right. When J.D. Vance was talking about cat ladies, I think he had Molly Jong-Fast in mind. What an insane lunatic here. Her glasses, her eyes, her mannerisms, her speech. It is all part of the leftist trope. She is just a caricature of a human being at this point. She has no original thoughts of her own. She wants you to believe, she wants her viewers to believe that JD Vance is seeking a white-only country, and she brings up the great replacement theory, which, by the way, seems to be pretty accurate now when you've got Democrats saying we need to replace white people, essentially. And, oh, by the way, JD Vance has 3 biracial kids. It's hard to sell the message that JD Vance wants a white America when he's married to an Indian woman and has 3 children with her. But she doesn't know that, or she doesn't care about that. She just wants to promote her false great replacement white supremacy agenda. And as we've been saying the entire show, that is enough for half of this country. Jason, welcome back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's like Antifa took out my internet. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
But yeah, this clip's a great one, isn't it? Where she says, like, I mean, people don't know JD Vance married an Indian immigrant. Her parents immigrated from India. He met her at, I think, Yale Law School. By the way, his second kid's name is Vivek. He knew
because
Vivek.
He was roommates with Vivek Ramaswamy. They're good friends. But Jason, he's such a racist. He's best friends with an Indian. He's married to an Indian. He gave his child the name of his Indian best friend. So much racism going on in JD Vance's immediate circle.
Oh my gosh. And that's what's funny. And you bring up JD Vance, so all these people are crazy. Now they're trying to coin Republicans are weird. Oh, they're so weird. And I think that's going to be like the biggest political backfire in the history of backfires, because it's like, here you have a transgender LGBTQ furry on the Democrat side, or you have these avowed racists who are talking about like this crazy white woman who probably owns 35 cats. They're mad JD Vance called out the cat women, but it's people like this. And like I say, people that are offended by being called a cat woman, you will never change their mind. It doesn't matter. Like,
yeah, we're not trying to win over the cat. She probably has 20 cats. She has the dyed hair. I imagine she's childless. Like, she will never vote for Donald Trump. Even if she gets mugged by reality after her own policy she votes for, she might vote for open borders. She might vote for releasing violent felons. She could have an illegal violent felon invade her home. And if you're in Minnesota, you are now obligated to retreat from that immediate threat, by the way. So she'll try to run away from the illegal home invader that's a repeat criminal. And she'll still vote for Democrats, even though she'll complain and be like, oh, my city's not safe anymore.
Oh my God. It is the most ridiculous thing ever. But hey, Todd, we're coming up on the top of the hour. You know what time that is, right?
Well, folks, we would be doing you all a disservice if we didn't share the wonderful news from Goldco, a partner of ours, and they're trying to protect your wealth right now. And Jason, full disclosure, we are not offering financial advice, but we do want to make an option available to all that right now, with all the inflation going on, with the devaluing of the dollar and a potential digital dollar, it might be time to explore some alternatives for your wealth and preserve as much wealth as possible. And so right now, folks, it looks like the government's pushing for a digital dollar. I wouldn't be surprised if Kamala Harris wins if they make that move in the next 4 years, which could mean every penny you spend could be tracked and controlled by the government. If that's true, then your entire life could depend on people you don't know, like, or trust. That's why smart Americans are opting out and putting some of their savings into real gold and silver. So to help, you can go to handsoffmywealth.com, handsoffmywealth.com, to get a free 2024 gold IRA kit from our partners at Goldco. It shows how to protect your hard-earned money with physical gold and silver, even if it's still in a retirement account. And as an American citizen, you could score up to $10,000 in free silver just for safeguarding your savings. At the very least, arm yourself with knowledge about your options here. Don't be a sheep. Go to handsoffmywealth.com. That's handsoffmywealth.com, or click on the link in the video description now to get your free 2024 gold IRA kit now.
Yeah, and I got to say, the jobs report came out today. They're finally the numbers are getting so bad that they can't hide them anymore. The unemployment rate, the reported unemployment rate, right, went up to 4.3. Plus, there's like 5% of Americans that want full-time jobs that can only find part-time jobs. And there's another like 6% of Americans that have been unemployed so long they quit looking. You add it all up, it's like a 11, 12% unemployment rate. And that's just from their report. That's without even...
That's what they're willing to admit.
Right. But they're going to report the headline like, oh, unemployment went up. It's at 4%. Folks, it's almost triple that. The stock market, everybody's talking about the stock market going up. The fact of the matter is, when your dollar's worth less, your stock market goes up, just like the value of your house. if a dollar is worth 80 cents, well, they're going to have to jack up the price of your house. That's why owning assets is always smart instead of owning cash.
Yeah, in my own dumb economic brain, I'm listening to Jerome Powell talk about reducing interest rates because they look at unemployment numbers and the inflation rate. And so you can watch a political football getting kicked around and thrown around right now before the election where they're going to lower rates. It will momentarily make the economy look stronger. Okay, things are looking a little cheaper. I might have a little more money. I can take out this loan. Watch that play out. Kamala can get reelected because, oh, look at us. We made the economy great right before the election. But Jason, you are stepping in a minefield if you're going to lower the interest rates right now. And if you think that's going to make home prices lower by making rates lower, again, I'm a dummy when it comes to economics. But if I know that more people will think they can afford a house with lower interest rates, guess what sellers are going to do?
Sometimes this stuff is just so hard to believe. But hey, we've got a few hot topics that we got to talk about, but we can't talk about it on Facebook or YouTube. So we appreciate folks that watch us and view us on those channels. And I got to say, it's fun too. Even Rumble, we got like over 20 live, which to do a show after we missed last week during the day, it's great to see. We'll end up getting like 10,000 views on there. But go over to Rumble. Join us there. We want to talk a little Trump assassination, and we got to touch on Venezuela a little bit, I think.
Ooh, Venezuela.
Just to nibble on that. But folks, we're going to take a quick break while we shift over for those on other platforms. So Todd and I got another half hour to go. Shift over to rumble.com, search for The American Tribune, and you'll find the two of us yapping over there in about a minute.
We'd love to see you there. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Have a great weekend otherwise.